It is high five now for the Minnesota Vikings as the team came back against the Arizona Cardinals to win their fifth straight game, 23-22 yesterday afternoon at the bank. And right now, our Vikings insider, Cody Benjamin, joins me now. And Cody, it just seems like the same story every week. It's always a very close game, but always coming out on top.
Yeah, it almost feels like we're reliving 2 years ago. I mean, the Vikings were 13-4 in 2022, Kevin O'Connell's first season as the Vikings head coach. Some key differences, and we might unpack those during this segment, between that team and this year. But yeah, it's kind of the same story. A bunch of close games. Somehow, each week, the Vikings are coming out of it. And I think that, you can look at Sam Darnold's resilience down the stretch against the Cardinals. You can look at the defense being opportunistic again in crunch time. But 10-2, somehow you are still, if you're the Vikings, better than the Packers right now. You're only one game back from the Detroit Lions, who are not so locked in as the NFC's #1 seed. So another gritty, not perfect, but victorious Sunday for the Vikings.
Now, I listened to the game on the radio as I was coming back from Thanksgiving, so I didn't get to see everything that happened. From your perspective, what was the key to sealing the win?
Well, I do think it was just resilience. I think that, by all measures, or most measures, Arizona should have won that game. They outpossessed the Vikings. They outgained the Vikings. They were up on the Vikings, and that's a team that, with Kyler Murray, James Conner, that's a team that should be able to continue to control the ball and kind of ice away a victory. It wasn't the case. And it was because the Vikings stepped up where it mattered situationally. So you look at the red zone. The Cardinals finished just 1 of 6 in the red zone. So that's a testament to Brian Flores' defense coming up big at the end of the field. And then at the end of the game, Byron Murphy, former Cardinals cornerback, coming up with a key pick of Kyler Murray. And then Sam Darnold, not a great first half, but he came up big down the stretch on a day where Aaron Jones was benched, where the run game wasn't working. He kept keeping his eyes downfield, kept targeting Justin Jefferson, fed his playmakers. And so it was the situational football, the second half football that really carried them.
When you look at this team at 10-2, and I don't think there was anyone that predicted this is where the Minnesota Vikings would be at this point in the season. For you, what is the best thing about what you've seen out of this team this season?
Yeah, they're in a weird spot where it's, already they have far exceeded expectations, relative, coming into the year. You lose J.J. McCarthy, your top pick for the season. Sam Darnold meant to be just a placeholder. And so at 10-2, you've already exceeded the expectations. The weird part is being 10-2, starting as well as they have, winning so many close games, you start to raise the bar for the fans. You start to raise expectations where now it's going to be a disappointment if they don't at least win a playoff game. And so the best thing about them, I think, is the fact that they continue to win on the margins. I mean, that's not easy to do week after week. Is it sustainable? That's debatable. But the fact that Kevin O'Connell has now started 10-2 in 2 of his 3 seasons as Vikings head coach, I just think they are they've got a good leadership structure that can build a program. They can maximize the talent at their disposal. Now, is this a Super Bowl contender? I don't know. I still have skepticism, but they've exceeded expectations already. The fact that they are always winning when it matters. Again, these aren't great teams that they've been beating. They haven't beaten up on teams really since September. But they are winning on the margins, and that's something that is just, bad football teams don't do. They are not a bad football team. They are going to be in the playoff mix.
And that is something that you can turn to when things don't go well in the playoffs. But that said, tell me about what are some of your biggest concerns as we get further along into the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's borders on being a football cliche, but, they say that the best teams beat up on the bad teams. And right now the Vikings are – you don't want to complain. Again, they've exceeded expectations. You don't want to complain about them continuing to stack wins. But if you're trying to adjust expectations to say, how far can this team actually go? Then you are going to look at, well, they're kind of scraping by teams like the Cardinals, teams like the Colts, the Jaguars, the Titans, teams that if you're truly a Super Bowl contender, you are routing them. You're not leaving it up to the last drive, the last quarter even. And so again, that's not to downplay what the Vikings have done. They're having an above average season. I just think that there's some concern that Sam Darnold, he's on the whole, he's earned himself a big money deal somewhere, whether that's in Minnesota or elsewhere. Can he sustain kind of this imperfect but resilient form into January? I'm not sure. And then Brian Flores' defense, they've been great at bending but not breaking. Can you bend without breaking into January when you're playing a team like the Lions or the Packers again or the Eagles? I'm not so sure.
We're talking with WCCO Vikings insider Cody Benjamin. Cody, there's a game that has probably been circled on the schedule for a long time. We're about to see Kirk Cousins, and it appears that he is going to return next week. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, this is a prime time for Kirk Cousins to come back to Minnesota if you're a Vikings fan, because he's in probably one of the worst slumps of his NFL career right now. I think there have been a few games this year where Kirk Cousins has been in peak form. He had a 4-touchdown outing. He lit up Tampa Bay a couple times earlier this year. Looked like the best version of himself. That has not been the case lately. It's been 3 straight games where Kirk Cousins hasn't thrown a touchdown, coming off a 4-interception game in the Falcons' loss on Sunday. Right now, he just looks a little bit like his age, older, and not as, obviously, mobility has never been a huge thing for him, but even the arm strength, it's just a little bit iffy the last few weeks. And so that's a great time for the Vikings to match up with him. Now, I think he won't say this, he's going to come into Minnesota with an edge. I don't think this is going to be a pushover game. But I do think the Vikings have the edge, considering the exotic pressures they can bring, the confusing looks they can bring on defense. I think the Vikings are going to be favored in this one, even if narrowly.
And really, it'll come down to, who can get those turnovers, and we haven't seen Atlanta doing a lot of that lately.
Yeah, and Sam Darnold, for all the grief he got for a couple weeks, kind of putting the ball in harm's way, this is still a guy who, again, when you look at the rest of the league, and even the way that guys like Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy, their turnover rates, Sam Darnold is still giving you borderline top 10 quarterback production, on the season as a whole. And so that has been better than what Kirk Cousins has been giving the Falcons. So, yeah, I think Minnesota does enter with that advantage as well.
Well, and hopefully the game will live up to the hype. That's what you always want in a situation like this when you've got a quarterback having to play against his old team.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk Cousins, for all the flack he got for not delivering, the big game victories for the Vikings, he was still a model of stability for most of the time, and he did have some cool upsets, at US Bank Stadium. I think of just, before he tore his Achilles, upsetting the 49ers there. I think that it's gonna be a fun atmosphere at the Viking Stadium.
And of course, Maria will be here next Monday to talk all about it with you. Cody Benjamin, we always appreciate the time.
Thanks so much, Derek. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you.